You are about to enjoy a Firearms Radio Network podcast. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows. If you like what we're doing and would like to help support the show, visit patreon.com/afteractionproject. If you'd like to throw us some free support and appreciation, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes. And then tonight's episode, just like every episode, is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Be sure to check out the other great podcasts on the Firearms Radio Network by visiting firearms-related.net. Tonight's episode 89, we are joined by Randy Harris of Combative Handgun. What the hell am I doing, Andy? Trying to close
Harris Combative Strategies.
Yeah, sorry.
Just another day.
Just another day. Usually I get to the name before I screw something up. I'll edit all that crap out. Tonight's episode 89, we are joined by Randy Harris of Harris Combative Strategies, and we're going to be discussing his Fundamentals of Vehicle Defense course. His students, Daryl, Suzanne, and Steve, will be joining us to give us the students' perspective on that course. And then our other show sponsor is the RangeBuddy.App. If you guys haven't checked that out, get over to your app store, download the RangeBuddy.App, and have some fun with it. It's up to 140 shooting drills now, all sorted out by the required target and filterable by the skills worked. The only virtual firearms instructor for you. We just introduced the dry fire tool and tracker that has a shooter's metronome in there, so you don't have to worry about converting beats per minute to shots or anything like that. You just enter the split times or the transition times that you want to work on, and it'll give you the audible tick for your dry fire pleasure. So let's get into it. Randy, introduce yourself to our listeners. Talk to us a little bit about what got you into the firearms training industry, and a brief intro into the fundamentals of vehicle defense course.
I'm Randy Harris, live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. What got me into it, I was the little kid that was, 10, 11, 12 years old, going with mom to the grocery store, and I'd stand there and read gun magazines the 2 hours that she's in the grocery store every week. So, as a teenager, I was kind of traveling a little different path of interest than what most of my classmates were. I actually ended up in the very early 90s having to use a gun in a vehicle to defend myself. So that gave me a little different perspective on things. Fast forward a few years, and I've got a friend who was teaching handgun carry permit classes here in Chattanooga, and needed help because he was a detective at the time and had gotten stuck working the night shift. And with class on Saturday, he was having a hard time getting into class at 8:30 in the morning, and he's like, "Hey, here's the deal. If you'll teach the first half of the class, which you don't have to be certified to teach the first half of the class, you knock that out, and then I'll come in the afternoon and teach the shooting part." And I was like, "Yeah, that's cool." So I make $100 or whatever for doing that and get some experience teaching. So essentially, I'm kind of, I don't know, I guess you'd say apprenticeshipping that way. Then I got certified to teach the handgun carry permit classes. Fast forward a few years, and Gabe Suarez of Suarez International was looking to start an instructor program. Went to a class that he had, and he said, "When can you start?" And so I taught with them for about 15 years, during which point I was the longest serving and most prolific instructor with them, taught over 200 classes with them. So it's one of those things. Gabe is a lightning rod to some degree. Some people love him, some people hate him. But it gave me an opportunity that I might not have otherwise had. I got to meet a whole lot of cool people in the industry. It got my foot in a lot of doors that otherwise it just probably never would have gotten into. Helping out with with TACCon, the original Warrior Talk Symposium. Traveling all over the Eastern U.S. teaching classes. So pretty much, on the job training. When I left Suarez in 2020, I, started doing my own thing under my own banner, and that's where we are now.
Man, that's a hell of a way to get into the industry. And yeah, Gabe tends to be a polarizing character. I don't know, character is a disrespectful way to put it, right? A polarizing instructor in the firearms training industry. And you summed it up great. We kind of just a defensive gun use inside of the vehicle. That is one heck of a way to complicate an already complicated situation. Are you able to talk about that a little bit more?
As far as my own personal experience with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can be a little vague about it, but yeah, as I kind of jokingly say in class, I was not necessarily always the upstanding citizen that I am now, and found myself in the car with another guy's girlfriend, a long time ago, and he was not real happy about it. Produced a knife, attempted to stab me while in the car. I drew my pistol, was able to get him out of the car, and fortunately bring this to an end without anybody having to get shot or stabbed. So at that point, I pretty much realized that there's a lot of stuff going on here other than just, plant your feet and point the gun in that direction and, press the trigger. And that kind of, I guess you would say, colored my vision of all training going forward from that. And I also realized pretty immediately, I probably survived this largely as much due to his ineptitude as it was due to my superior skill. And that superior skill is, sarcastic there. So, because I really didn't have much superior skill then.
That's similar to a story that Andy tells in the classes that we teach, and kind of was his origin story into the firearms training industry as well. And Andy's talked about it a time or two on the podcast in the past. So let's talk about let's get some introductions from our students. Steve, I'm going to kick it over to you. Talk to us a little bit about yourself and your experience in the firearms training industry, and then round it out with what the heck brought you to the fundamentals of vehicle defense course.
Well, I'm Steve Bean. I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. I grew up, fortunately, in a time where it wasn't too hard to leave out your back door and go hunting somewhere, and my father certainly helped me along with that. So I did a lot of shotgun shooting initially and was somewhat competitive in trap skeet and then sporting clays. Then my wife and I and another couple on a lark went to Las Vegas in the now defunct Front site and went to the 4-day defensive handgun course there. And I really got my feelings hurt when I saw people who could really handle a handgun. And I realized I sucked pretty bad at it. And so after that, I needed to fix that. And I started going to classes. And fortunately, Randy's in my backyard. And I was able to take and still take classes with Randy, and been through the all the NRA personal defense in the home, outside the home, those sort of things. Got involved with Range Master and did through the advanced instructor program with them, and fortunately got the hook up with Dave Spalding, and I've ran into, of course, John Hearn, Lee Weems, and Carl Wren.
Steve and I were in Gabe White's class together.
Yeah.
So
been with Gabe, and of course, I won't say it, but he and Hearn got turbo pins in that class, and that was pretty impressive to be able to watch that. Two very competent pistoleros there. And I really enjoy training. And so fortunately, I get to take advantage of Randy being here and have done the fight at night class, rifle class, shotgun class, the automobile class, and some other pistol classes. And Randy's a very good instructor, and I enjoy all these classes.
I appreciate that.
That's awesome, man. And that's a pretty awesome training resume, man. We had Gabe White on last week, and I think it was last week, right? Or the week before. And it was a great conversation. And the turbo pin, that's no easy feat, man. That's awesome. So hats off to you, Randy.
Thanks.
Daryl and Suzanne. Susan or Suzanne? Before I wrote
Suzanne, thank you.
Suzanne. Yeah. Suzanne, introduce yourself to our listeners and talk a little bit about your background in the firearms training industry and what brought you to this course.
Yeah. I've always been staunchly independent. I didn't marry until till after 50 years old. I'll be 55 this month. And I've always loved the concept and embraced the concept of self-defense. I had a scare in my own home, probably back in 2000, 2001. And I was armed, everything was fine, but it really got me to thinking about self-defense, and the situation was that close that I started pursuing, reading about and learning about more and more as much as I could self-defense, whether it was firearms or any other type of self-defense. And I wanted to learn more about guns. I was kind of a walk-on into IDPA for competition shooting, which was, it's based on self-defense, which is where I met my now husband. And after that, I just couldn't learn enough. I just wanted to know more and more and more, everything I could about self-defense. Some people joke about the books that are sitting on my bookshelf that would scare the living daylights out of people, but it's knowledge. It's knowledge, and knowledge is king. And it's my favorite thing to learn about. I can't get enough of it. So Daryl and I have taken a lot of classes since 2015. Larry Vickers, Chris Peranto,
Vogel, we just took the Vogel course.
Frank Proctor, and Randy's class, that vehicle class. I don't know if anything will top that class for me. It was just so invaluable. It was just a tremendous class. He's an incredible instructor, and he doesn't know it, but I just got a new shotgun, my first shotgun. So I'll be taking his class as soon as I can sign up for it. But so that's kind of my trajectory towards, to where I am now. I'm a certified instructor through NRA and USCCA. I can't learn enough. Student for life.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. Daryl, your turn. You're up, buddy. A little bit about your training
All right,
background.
last, Daryl Fliggett. I grew up shooting with my father and my grandfather, and got out of it for a long time. And then about 2007, got back into it, got the bug, started taking training courses, and got into IDPA. So since then, I've taken, 30, 35 classes over the years, about anybody you can imagine. Some guys multiple times. Got heavy in the IDPA, still compete in IDPA pretty much weekly. Traveled all over, shooting matches, was lucky enough, had a good day, won the Maryland State Championship in 2017. And so definitely, IDPA is kind of my thing. I enjoy that.
Don't let him lie. He didn't get lucky. He's a good shooter.
I had a good day.
Mm-hmm.
Did have my own training company back in Maryland, where we used to live, for a couple of years, and did some private training there in Maryland. Haven't done any for a while. I'm still an NRA instructor and keep those certs up, but haven't been shooting right now and taking some courses. And so as for why I did this course, one, Suzanne had taken a Red Dot course with Randy and came back with good reviews. Said, had a good weekend, learned a lot from them. And then I've taken vehicle courses from Kyle Lamb, Pat McNamara, Mike Pannone, and Travis Haley. And they were all great courses and learned a lot, invaluable stuff. But those courses, you shoot out of junker cars that don't move. And Randy's vehicle course allows us to do something that you can't do in most other courses, which is we got to shoot out of our own cars. And he'll go into that in more detail, I'm sure. But for me, that was the real reason that I was very interested in that course. Besides, I knew and heard he was a good instructor, but it was that unique aspect of the vehicle course that I was really, really interested in.
And for me too, just invaluable. You can't put a price on that experience and training.
So let's get into it. Let's, Randy, let's talk about the nuts and bolts of the class. What are the course requirements? How many rounds of ammo or do students need to bring with them? Outside the waistband, holster, inside, all that good stuff.
All of the above. We're probably going to have people that are getting apoplectic about stuff, but it's just, here's how it is. I normally tell people like 250 to 300 rounds. As far as inside the waistband, outside the waistband, I say whatever you actually carry, bring that, because this class is about you and your, as Dave Spalding puts it, real world of work. However you run every day, what you normally wear. If you don't wear a battle belt every day, don't show up with a battle belt on. Okay, most of us don't wear that in our vehicle. So now, if your everyday job is, guarding big truckfuls of cash or something, and you want to come do this in your battle belt and your armor, rock on. But most of us are probably going to be dressed mostly like we are right now. So whatever holster you use. The one thing that I tell people when they want to sign up for the class, I say you need to have a firm understanding of the 4 safety rules. You need to understand that, a straight finger, if the gun's not needing to go bang right now, your finger has to be straight all the time. That's not really negotiable on this. Because you're going to be working inside a vehicle. You're also going to be working inside a vehicle with another person in there for some of the class. So, I'm a firm believer in the first time you see something for real, the first time you see something doesn't need to be when it's for real. Okay, so the first time you're trying to figure out how you're going to get your gun out and not shoot your wife in the head while you deal with the problem out the passenger side window does not need to be when it's for real. So that's kind of how I run the class.
I love it. And so Daryl mentioned that you got to shoot from your own vehicle. Is that why stray away from, I guess, not everybody else, but what you see typically in a vehicle combat course or vehicle course is the dummy car, right? Like the car that's shot up, the windshield is shot out.
Because you're not going to be driving that car around your town. So that's the big thing. The other thing is, if I'm having to source a car, traveling around different places, then the class just got a little bit more expensive. On all my classes, I try to keep them. A Tom Givens quote: "The best way to end up with $1 million as a gun instructor is to start out with 2." So, a lot of us don't do this to get rich. I do it to take the skills that I have amassed over the last 25 years and help other good people to get home to their families. I like to make a little bit of money here and there, but it's not about getting rich. So if I'm going to provide a vehicle at every class, it's going to make the price jump up. The other thing is, again, you can shoot out of other, vehicles, somebody else's junker vehicle at pretty much any other class that you go to. Mine, you're going to shoot out of your own. You're going to figure out exactly what the problem areas are, because not every car fits the same way. So, like, if you're in an SUV or let's back that up. Let's say that you drive, I don't know, we'll make something up. Say you drive a Miata or something. And I've got an SUV there in the class. Well, I mean, other than it being a vehicle, that doesn't necessarily apply to you. Especially when you're having to work with getting the seatbelt off, getting out of the vehicle, stuff like that. If I've got some old, 1970s Buick or something with a bench seat, that's going to be different than your Audi with your bucket seats. So I actually had another guy, they mentioned the being able to shoot from your own vehicle. There's a guy, I'm not going to use his name, but he is essentially he's a security contractor who travels the world. I always see his stuff on Facebook. It's pretty cool because he's in a different country every 3 or 4 weeks. And he came to the class specifically. I didn't know him before this. He said that he came specifically because he's been to a bunch of vehicle classes. He's never been to one that they had him shoot from their own vehicle. And he was intrigued by that idea. So he wanted to come take the class. And, when it was over, he was like, dude, this is pretty cool. I learned a lot from this that I didn't learn in the other classes, just simply because, now I know where all the problem areas are in my vehicle. I know how to get the seatbelt off in my vehicle. You're not having to learn it at one place and then now go take it home and apply it to your own vehicle without anybody there helping you or giving you any coaching. You're getting it all in your own vehicle there on the range. So that's my perspective.
No, that makes sense, and it's a great point, right? Like it's not, the interior of a vehicle is not universal, right? It's very different from vehicle to vehicle, make to make, and then from body makeup and body makeup, right? So that's pretty forward thinking, and I'd imagine that the benefit that your students receive from it is great. What about so typically when we see, so Andy and I had the pleasure of taking a vehicle course. It's been some years now, right? And we walked away with some interesting insights from that course. What are some of the things that you're having your students work on through that course specifically that you wouldn't necessarily get from the typical stand and shoot defensive handgun course?
Okay, here's where, like I said, some people are going to get apoplectic at some point. Drawing a gun in a car is something that makes the typical NRA instructor a little nervous. I've had arguments with people. I've posted some video on Facebook from the class, and people lose their mind about people drawing a pistol and coming across and out the window. And I'm like, okay, what kind of holster are you wearing right now? Are you sitting down? They're like, well, yeah. Are you wearing an appendix holster? Yeah. Well, gun's pointed at you. So why is the gun not going off? It's pointed at you. Why is it not going off? Nobody's working the trigger, right? So if we stay off the trigger and we're not being careless with the muzzle, we know exactly what we're doing with it. Okay, we're mitigating the danger by keeping the finger off the trigger. Okay, so how are ways that we can get around that? Well, you can do the old run the gun around the steering wheel thing that some people teach, that they'll tell you at the beginning, we're teaching you this because it's safer than doing it the other way. So that tells me you're not going to do this for real, and I'm not going to teach you what you're going to do for real because I don't think that you're capable of doing it. That's essentially what we're telling people. So whereas I'm like, we're all adults here. Nobody wants to shoot themselves. Nobody wants to shoot anybody else. Right now, all of us are not shooting each other. Okay. So how do we keep from shooting each other? We just keep not shooting each other. All right. Keep your fingers straight. Watch your muzzle. If you have to cross yourself with it, again, we're not doing it carelessly. We're doing it, with intention to get it out the window. Just like if we're drawing the gun and we've got somebody in the passenger seat, we're going to use our body to pin them into the seat, to keep the gun muzzle off of them, and get the gun around them. But that makes a lot of people really, really nervous when they see a little snippet of video with no context for it. And also without seeing the 4 hours of dry work that we did before anybody's handling a live gun.
Yeah, I'd imagine that gets the comment section flowing pretty well. Steve, let's expand on that a little bit from the student's perspective. What did that look like for you when you were working on presenting the handgun from the holster inside the vehicle?
Again, it was one of those things that made this class a little special because you are using your own car, and you are using your own friends as a passenger in that car, and no vehicles were harmed during the course, and everybody's still friends after the course. So that speaks well of it. And there was a lot of dry work. Again, it's not really anything you think about much unless you go. How do you shoot around your passengers? How do you get the seatbelt off? Especially in the crazy world we have today, where you may run into a group of protesters that surround your car. What do you do? And then the road rage that's prevalent now. So working on those skills before you need those skills is invaluable. And again, just a very different and beneficial course that has a lot of practical applications during the instruction.
I find it super interesting because number one, obviously using your own vehicle to be able to train out of, to understand, how to fight out of your own vehicle. That kind of makes a little bit of sense there. The other thing, Jeremy mentioned, we did a vehicle combat course a while back, and there was a couple of frustrations and struggles for me that didn't make a lot of sense. So Randy, I'm going to ask you one question, if you want to share some secret sauce. So I'm kind of a bigger dude, right? And so if I'm in the driver's seat, this instructor was teaching us to unbuckle the seatbelt. You got to reach crossbody, reach over and unbuckle your seatbelt. Well, I can't do that exactly easily, right? And so I said, hey, so what's the other option for a guy like me to reach across and get the seatbelt unbuckled? And the answer was, well, you just got to figure it out. And I was like, whoa, I'm paying you to figure that out for me. So anyway, Randy, help me out. Tell me, as a bigger dude myself, how would I unbuckle the seatbelt in your course in order to be able to get out of the vehicle?
Well, unfortunately, that's one of those things I'm going to have to see exactly what we're dealing with to give you the best answer on that. An answer on that is simply, if you need to do it with your right, are you right-handed or left-handed?
I'm right-handed.
Are you right? Okay. If you need to do it with your right hand, then do it with your right hand. If you can't get over to it with your left hand, then, I mean, that's just what you're going to have to do. That's like, saying, I don't know, I can't reach the shelf up here. Oh, you have to reach that shelf up there. Well, no, you can go get a ladder if you need to. So if you want to use the other hand to hit the button with, there were a couple of different ways that people did it. I'm not real dogmatic on you have to do it this way, because not everybody's the same. Body types, I'm going to guess you and I are probably closer in body type than, say, you and Daryl are. So we might have to do it a little bit differently than some people. The guy that I was talking about earlier, the security contractor, when I was showing him how to do the belt, because of a very specific watch that his team wears, they all wear the same watch. Because of that, he couldn't do it, or it was slowing him up to do it the way that I was showing them initially. And he was doing it a slightly different way to not get the belt hung up on the watch. And I was like, well, in your case, again, your real world of work, then you do it the way that you have to do it to work around the equipment that you're dealing with. So again, it's not this is the only way that it works. We can give you a best practice kind of thing, and then step away from that as necessary. So
I really like the idea of that. For me, I drive a lifted truck, so having to work out of like a junker car or whatever, and then I hop in my big old lifted truck,
right.
Just for like a minor example, like kicking the driver door open as I'm stepping out, shooting through the V is not something I can do in my truck. So I've always like, how am I going to do this? Right. So interesting thought process. Suzanne, I want to just derail the whole thing real quick, because you mentioned a couple things in the beginning, and that was about books that you had on the shelf that some people might be like, holy crap, she's like a mass murderer or something, joking. But give me some good ideas of some of the books that you have that you highly recommend for people to read.
Yeah, for sure. I also like knives. So all things Steve Terrani, if you haven't read anything of his. One of his best to me is, I might screw the title up, Your Mind is Your Most Powerful Weapon. I'm paraphrasing the title, but it's an incredible book. Rory Miller, he's written several, I'm trying to think of his titles. I
can't remember. Is it When Violence is the Answer? Is that one of his?
That's Tim Larkin.
Tim Larkin.
Tim Larkin is probably top on my list. When Violence is the Answer is a fantastic book. So Terrani, Tim Larkin, Rory Miller. My goodness gracious, I'm drawing a blank probably, but yeah, those are probably my top three for sure.
We had.
Go ahead.
Oh, we had Tim Larkin on the show here a few years back, so it was really good to have him on the show. Yeah, when we talked about When Violence is the Answer. The other one that Jeremy
Yeah.
turned me on to a long time ago was The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. And
that's another one. That's another one. Yes.
We talk
Awesome
about that
book.
book often, and we just say, hey, last paragraph or last chapter, ignore all the gun control crap on there. Just read the book.
Yeah.
But Suzanne, what did you find as far as this course that may have provided difficulty the most for you?
Provided difficulty. I don't know, except that, it just was a matter of applying the material to your own personal being and how you carry about in your sphere, if you will. Just thinking about it, how it applies to you. Difficulty. I think my only difficulty was probably my truck didn't allow me to do a couple things that it would have. I think I was just too chicken to use it, and I regret it. But anyway, I borrowed his truck to take a shot out of the back window. I didn't have a back door in my small truck, but not really anything. I loved every aspect of that class so much, and if I got another truck, I'd take the class again. So really, it was just, I don't know. Everything was just invaluable. I don't know that there's another class like it. It just applies to one as an individual, because you're learning from your own vehicle. And there's not a day that passes. And I love that. There's not a day that passes since I took that class, which was
last year,
coming up on a year. Yeah. That every moment when I'm in my vehicle, which I love, it's in my head. I'm constantly, just like anything else I read, that is valuable material. I'm constantly thinking about it in a red light with my seatbelt, looking out every, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, wherever you're looking. It's just invaluable.
I think she mostly thinks about it because brass keeps coming out from under her seat.
I did have it detailed just maybe a month ago, and I was wondering if they'd find just one more. Yeah.
Randy, so is there a reluctance on the students when you say, hey, go grab your car and bring it up here and pull it up to the line? And is there a reluctance in the beginning to kind of get over that fear of like, maybe I'm going to cause damage or maybe I'm going to do something wrong? And how do you get the students over that?
Well, I think there might be initially, at the very beginning of class. But again, I structure this so that we're doing, a little bit of classroom. We talk about why we're going to do what we're going to do. We, have a pretty thorough safety lecture, have safety plan in place, all that stuff. And then we do everything we're going to do in the vehicle dry. We do it first in chairs. Like folding chairs, so I can, set them out on the range how we need to do it. Anything from getting up and moving to the back of the vehicle and, stacking all the pillars, which there's not a whole lot of pillars in a folding chair, but, you've got theater of the mind to make that happen. So, getting out of the vehicle, and then we look at, well, what if we can't get out of the vehicle? What if we're, sitting here at the red light with people in front of us and dude comes up to the window here to, carjack us? You can't just drive away in that particular case. So it's either fight it out in the vehicle or, give them your car. Sometimes give them your car is the right answer. Sometimes it may not be the answer. Just up to each individual. So we go through all this stuff. Like I said, everything that we're going to do live in the vehicle, we do that dry in chairs and then do it dry in your vehicle before we fire the first shot. So by the time they're actually shooting from the vehicle, they've already been doing this for several hours. And now it's just a matter of making sure that you don't forget about height over bore with your sights with regards to your rear view mirror. So
I like it. And then one more question for you, and I'll kick it back over to Jeremy. What's your thoughts on gun magnets mounted to vehicles and people slapping those magnets or those guns to magnets and driving around in them?
I'm not a big fan. So it's just, I'm more worried about how many wrecks are you potentially going to be involved in versus how many carjackings you're going to be potentially involved in. And I really don't want an unsecured gun bouncing around in the vehicle if we do end up having some kind of collision. So that's
Awesome.
just my 2 cents. I could be wrong, but I doubt it.
They're
I
stupid.
I wasn't
Stupid.
going to say that, but you know.
Well, you're nice. They're dumb, and they're just. It's one of those things where you see it and you're like, oh, that's at face value. If you don't know any better, I can see why people might think that's a good idea. Never mind the fact that you have to take your gun out of your holster and stick it on a magnet every time you want to do this, and then you got to put it back in your holster anytime you're getting out of your vehicle.
Yeah. And just let me interject real quick, and you know, we can point to real world stuff on that. The 1986 Miami shootout between the FBI and Platt and Maddox. A couple of the FBI guys, Minalzi lost his gun out the window of his car in the crash, so he was basically had to hide behind a wall because there wasn't anything he could do. He was unarmed for the rest of the fight. Couple of the other guys, Hanlon, the biggest guy on the scene, fought with a 5-shot J-frame because he lost his service pistol, went up under the dash in the crash, and because he had it sitting on the passenger seat, because he would be theoretically easier to get to it there instead of just leaving it in the holster. And when the car crashed, he couldn't find his pistol because it's up under the dash, and so he's rocking with a 5-shot J-frame against a dude with a 40-round mag semi-auto rifle. So
your car is not a holster,
right?
Daryl, I want to kick the same question that Andy asked Suzanne over to you. What were some of the challenges that you had in this class?
Randy went into how he structured it, which I thought was great. He makes us shoot from a lot of different angles, out your side windows, out your back. So there were a couple angles that we did that I remember having some issues with just because they were tough, leading at your driver's side, shooting behind you. I remember that one gave me some issues.
For sure.
So that was, so that's good. It's challenging. So, it was really good. I think the biggest thing for me is, usually when Suzanne and I go somewhere, we go in my truck and I drive. And like how Randy was talking about, you got to shoot with another person in your vehicle. Well, I had Suzanne next to me. So being able to shoot around, being able to, maneuver around her, shoot around her, was huge because that's a very real scenario that could happen to us because we're in the vehicle a lot. So that was just an invaluable tool for us to get that experience to do that. So I think that was probably the biggest takeaway for me.
And in addition to practice those skills or to learn those skills as both the driver and the passenger. So those roles were reversed throughout the class. So just amazing.
I want to follow up on that. I want to get Randy's perspective on this. How do you, because typically, I don't know, this is me just kind of assuming some things, but typically in a couple, you typically don't see both of them into firearms, both of them taking firearms courses together. Like my wife and I, you know what I mean? I'm the primary gun guy, right? Like if there was an incident in the vehicle, it would be me going to my gun and doing the work. And I'd imagine in Daryl and Suzanne's case, that probably isn't the case. Right now we have 2 active participants in that. How I want to kick it to Randy,
like a
and
pirate ship giving him a broadside. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. So how did you I guess kind of how do you handle that, and how often are you seeing that where it's husband and wife showing up, couple showing up, and they're both kind of the same mindset?
Not as often as I would like to see, but I mean that's okay. Not everybody is geared that way. Not everyone is what's the word I'm looking for? That just doesn't resonate with all women, and that's fine. I mean, that's not, historically, that's not their role. Historically, what's their role? It's, they're more nurturers and we're more, fighters, I guess you'd say. Some people are going to say that's a really, non-progressive way of looking at things, but that's just for the last, however many thousand years, that's how it's been. I tell people in class, if your significant other is not into this kind of thing, you're going to have the talk with them at some point that bad things can happen and they tend to kick off quickly. And you're going to have some kind of signal, word, something or other, that when you tell the other person, and it could be that it's, the female of the couple here is the gun person and the man's not the gun person, that's fine. Whichever person's taking the lead in this, you need to have an understanding. The way I tell this story in class is, we've all seen the movie Heat, hopefully, and the line where they're in the truck there doing surveillance, when Macaulay and his crew are about to rob the place, and then they were like, "Oh, wait a minute, we're not doing it." And the SWAT commander tells Vincent Hanna, he says, "I'm not taking the heat for my boss. We're going to go arrest him now." He's like, "Arrest him for what? They didn't steal anything." And he's like, "I don't care. We're doing it." And he says, "I have tactical command that supersedes your rank." So that's what I tell my wife. In these situations, I have tactical command, which supersedes your normal rank. So that's normally I'll be happy to listen to what she says and take her advice. But under these kind of circumstances, I'm in charge. And I'm going to, if I tell you to do something, I'm telling you that for your own good, for our own good, not just to be bossy, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I briefly want to get Daryl and Suzanne's input on that. How does that work and look for you both? If you're both in a vehicle at the same time, have you guys role played that your response? Do the circumstances dictate it? Hey, if it's driver's side, I got it, and I don't need you to worry about pinning me. Kind of walk us through that.
I think what they do is they rock, paper, scissors before they get in the vehicle every time to decide who gets to be the one. That's what I would do. I'm just saying.
That's pretty close. I shoot with both of them. You talk about the epitome of poor victim selection. That would be it right there.
It's like that scene in 13 Hours at the very beginning where the two guys come up on either side of the cars, and the two guys, one's pointing out
it's
one,
good because I'm
one's pointing at
left-handed
the
and
other one.
she's right-handed. So if we're in the vehicle and I'm driving and she's a passenger, we can get out the side windows easy.
Yeah.
So we've got it covered. It's not something that we really talk about. I mean, we have, we went down, was it last year?
Yeah.
We spent a half a day with Frank Proctor on this very thing. And we said, hey, we're out a lot. Kind of go through us with some, not necessarily CQB, but just some movement, some cover. If we got into a situation, we're in a parking lot, we're at a convenience store, whatever, what are some things that we can do so that we can communicate well and we can move together to either get ourselves out of the situation or protect ourselves or whatever. And it was great. He loved it. We had a good time with him. We worked on a lot of different stuff. He set up a lot, some different scenarios and stuff, and we were able to kind of walk through some things and live fire some things that she gave us a lot of confidence to be able, once again, kind of just building on what we did in Randy's course, to be able to be comfortable together, both with firearms, working around each other and working together as a team.
We also learned advantageously by nature, if we're going in to clear an area and we're stacked and he's behind me, it works perfectly. He's got the better view. He's so much taller than me. So it worked. Nice.
Steve, I want to kick it over to you. As an instructor who's taken a ton of training courses, if you're anything like me, when I'm in class, when I'm taking a class, one of the things that I'm looking for is how the instructor teaches and presents the methods and what they're teaching. But I also look at the students, and I kind of approach that or through the lens of, if I had a student that was having similar issues or concerns or whatever it may be, how would I help them through that? So kind of through the instructor's lens, as you're a student in this course, what were some of the things that you saw other students not struggling to kind of keep up with, but what were some of those challenge points or those pain points that some other students might have had, I guess, in the earlier parts of the course?
I don't know that I saw anybody really struggle with anything. And having taken a lot of classes with Randy, his demeanor is so smooth and easy going. If somebody has a problem, he recognizes it, and he's taking that extra time to help somebody over a particular technique or whatever the issue may be. But I'm like every other instructor. I'm trying to steal information and qualities and deliveries that would help me help others. And Randy does that quite well. That's why I keep going back. So the other thing is that in this particular course, it's not a square range course. We start out on the square range, but then we move the vehicles out in the field. And so it gives you a more realistic flavor of moving around your vehicle and not having to just point at one particular area. And then he also uses a reactive target. So it's not that you put a hole in the cardboard. These targets you have to hit sort of high center chest to get that best shot and that best result from those shots. And
hey Steve, you want to explain the taking it out in the field and like what we do as far as the moving the target around to get your reps on different directions?
Well, our cars are in different positions, but the place that I took this course, the range is it's easily, I guess, a 270. Well, I won't say that, but you could easily shoot around yourself 180 degrees and have a safe landing spot for your bullets. And so, and then the cars are angled certain ways to address the targets as well. So it's, we don't have a 360 degree range, but
well, what I was talking about is when we do the dry work where I'm moving the target around the car. So that's what I was getting at.
Well, and we did a lot of that dry work with those targets in those different positions before, of course, we went live. But again, it's just a little bit different. If people talk about an advanced course, it's advanced in that method of where the targets move, but also it's not for your beginner that, again, doesn't have good trigger finger discipline and understand where that muzzle's being pointed when it goes bang.
Randy, expand on that a little bit. Talk to us about that drill that you were mentioning, the dry fire work that you're doing in the class.
Yeah, so after we come off of the square range, what I do is I'll have everybody line their car up, and I'll take. You guys are probably familiar with the different people call them different things. It's the TACman or Tactical Ted. It's the 3D plastic shell essentially that's an upper body. I'll take those and I've got them on small easily movable stands, and we'll like start out with them just right here in your driver's side door. So he's maybe 3 yards out, just like dude's approaching you, gives you the old hey fool, give it up, right there through the window trying to carjack you. So you're going to spend the next 15 minutes, whatever, working on getting your pistol out and getting it out the driver's side door or out the driver's side window. Then we'll start moving them around the car, and you'll have 10, 15 minutes to work on how would you address the target from this spot. There'll be some spots, depending on your vehicle, you may not have a shot from there. So it's just not every car is the same. Some cars you can reach that, some you can't. Like Suzanne was mentioning earlier with her truck, there's one directly to the rear. Like if I'm, and this is weird for me looking at me on the thing here, because everything I'm doing is reverse. So I don't know if you guys are seeing it the same way, but if I'm looking out my driver's side window and trying to engage a target directly behind me, depending on how your vehicle is put together that may work pretty well for you. You may not. You may have to open the door to do that. And you're like, well, why would you do that? Well, because I just looked in the rearview mirror and I see a dude pulling his pistol out, walking up to my door, and for some reason, either the car's not on, or I'm trapped in traffic, and that's what I got to do. I really can't bail out and get away. If I bail out this side, I'm going to be dealing with him. So I'm just going to sit in the seat, keep pillars between me and them, and get to work.
Or it's it's a guy working with his buddy. I think I saw a video recently. I'm not sure where I saw it, but it was two vehicles working together. One of them kind of pinned in the other vehicle to kind of control. So from their perspective, they want to control that situation a little bit more, make sure that the person they intend to victimize isn't going to be able to run away freely from them. What are some of the, I guess, and I don't know if this question is applicable for all courses, and I don't know if it's applicable for oftentimes that we ask it, but I do like to get the kind of your perspective as an instructor on what some of the things that the typical student struggles with in that class. And that might not be applicable, right? It might just be, hey, we're going to work on the fundamentals that you have sound fundamentals. We're going to work on applying those in the context of being inside your vehicle. But is there something that typically stands out that you kind of expect students to kind of be a challenge point for them?
No, just the initial. Most folks have really never done much work seated, and most folks have never done any work seated in a vehicle. So I'm like, yeah, we all see YouTube videos and stuff of whoever's class and all that, but do you know how many people out of the vast number of gun carriers actually go to those classes? It's an infinitesimally small amount of folks. So most people have never done any of this kind of thing before. And, they're a little apprehensive about that to begin with. And, that's another reason that we don't roll out and, okay, everybody jump in your car and load your pistol up, to start out with. That's why we do, 3-4 hours of dry work before anybody's handling a loaded pistol, so that everybody is 100%, or well, nobody's 100%, but everybody's as confident and competent as they can possibly be. And pretty sure that they're not going to shoot a hole in their own vehicle, because that's the biggest thing that people seem to say to me at the very beginning is they're like, have you ever had anybody shoot a hole in their car? I was like, nope, but don't be the first. So
I'd imagine it adds a level of accountability, right? Because typically, if you're in a class, you have cardboard tape or cardboard targets downrange, and that's it. There's no consequence other than, oh, hey, you missed, right? Now, if you're working inside of something that you paid a good bit of money for, I'd imagine you're going to be a little bit more deliberate with the actions that you're taking before you press off that shot, right?
Well, we can make an argument that you should always be very deliberate with what you're doing before you press off a shot.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, it's not an IDPA match or a USPSA match. Everything it's kind of trite now, and with every bullet that leaves your muzzle has a lawyer attached to it. Some people want to argue that it's reality. This is not a border crossing in Europe in 1943, and the SS guy's checking your papers, and once he figures out that you're not who you say you are, you're going to the gulag, and if you fire off 20 rounds and hit 4 nuns, it's okay because it's World War II. That world doesn't exist anymore. So I mean, we're getting to the point now where people are actually getting in trouble legally for pointing guns at people, not just accidentally shooting them. So you need to be pretty deliberate anytime we fire a gun in public. So I think that actually kind of helps, because it's the old think twice before you shoot off your rear view mirror. You need to think twice before we send a bullet out into the world, because rule 4 is a real thing. Know your target and what's beyond it, and also what's between you and it. So,
no, absolutely. I agree completely. So typically, or I don't know if it's typical, right? But what we'll see in vehicle courses is shooting through the windshield. And one of the things that's always kind of perplexed me is as it seems to be the general rule of thumb, is you put a keyhole in the windshield, right? You plug a hole, and then you want each subsequent round to go through that same bullet hole. And the thing that always struck me as odd is well, in what world is the thing that you shot that first round at still going to be there, so that you can continue to use that same little keyhole to fire additional rounds through it? So what are your thoughts on that? And I know it's outside of the context of the class, because you're not having students shoot out their windshields.
My personal feeling on that, nothing moves like a person like cardboard. I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's the reason that they're still there to shoot at, is because it's not a live person. Generally, you point guns at people, and especially shoot guns at people, they tend to scatter like cockroaches. So they may or may not still be there to shoot the round 4, 5, and 6 through. Now, there is a video that you can actually pull up on YouTube. This is from about, I'm going to scientifically wild ass guess, this is about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe 8. Where Louisville PD had a shooting, and they've got this on video from 3 different directions from different body cams, because a bunch of people took, there's at least 3 people that fired. So one of the people that fired is driving his patrol car up to the curb, basically where the dude is that's pulled his gun out and is shooting at the detective. And so patrol officer rolls right up to the curb, hauls his pistol out, and cranks about 6 rounds through the windshield at the dude. After the detective had been engaging him, and then there's a police officer down the street that is essentially running full bore down the road, screaming at the top of his lungs, firing his Glock 22, essentially at a cyclic rate, which I'm still amazed that he didn't hit everybody on the scene that was downrange. And then there's another guy that we're pretty sure he was probably just trying to get out of having to work the Kentucky Derby duty. So he pulls up, gets out, fires 1 shot, and then, he's probably off for 4 or 5 days for, investigation or whatever. So, but that's a real life, USA civilian world. Well, civilian world, not meaning military, but civilian world, use of shooting through the window, or through the windshield. But other than that, it's just not super common. Again, what we're primarily dealing with in the class is carjacking scenario. Not so much I'm rolling up on the scene where my detective here is in a gunfight with this guy on the curb. So
that makes sense. It's just something that always struck me as kind of odd. It's like, hey, there's a lot of, logistically, I'd imagine there's a lot of effort that goes into getting that car out there, and then for something that really is, in my mind, isn't practical, right? If you're shooting at somebody through the windshield, you're going to put a whole bunch of holes in that windshield, and not just try to use that same one. So I just wanted to get your perspective on it as somebody that deals with this on a regular basis. We talked a little bit about, or Suzanne was talking about, her competitive background, and Daryl as well. I want to kick it over to them and kind of get your opinion. Do you feel like that your background in competitive shooting has better prepared you for remaining safe in the context of a defensive gun use?
1000%. And it's why I chose that discipline, because I wanted to, after I was always pro 2A and armed. And after I had that incident, I learned about that particular discipline, which is it's International Defensive Pistol Association. So I always say, I don't know that you will find a safer and more responsible gun owner than one that has practiced and participated in that discipline. Its foundation is safety and then self-defense. So there are USPSA similar, but not. That's more a run and gun, and it has its values and it's a good sport. But for this particular discipline, it's it builds stages that mimic what's going on in a grocery store or in a bank, or you're in your house and here is your written scenario, solve your problems. It 1,000% has prepared me and helped me with whatever situation I could run into.
Yeah, I think competitive shooting, two things for me come from it. One is the increased ability of your gun handling more than anything. Your trigger finger, your muzzle discipline really is ground into you, those two aspects, and how to be able to move around safely with that gun and handle that gun in a more of a fast-paced environment, moving from position to position, shooting different positions too. I think the other thing that you get from the competition is you learn very quickly what you suck at and what you need to improve on, whether it's one-handed shooting or reloads or distance shooting or whatever. You start shooting some matches, you're going to find out real quickly, hey, I need to work on this. Because if you want to do well in the match, you need to be well-rounded and be able to do everything well. You don't have to be awesome at it, but you need to do everything well in that toolbox. And so I think matches really bring that out, that what you may struggle with initially and what you need to focus your practice time on.
And then back to the safety aspect is what I said, and he just expanded upon, is that it reinforces that in such a way that in the competition as a shooter, you are heavily penalized for making mistakes that in real life could cost a life, could risk another life, an innocent life. And sometimes in such a way that you're shamed. You go home if you make a mistake, and it hurts a little, but it drives it home as to look what you could have done. So I tell anybody, I have a security guard license, and I talk to people about that. Some people that are security guards, they don't get to shoot much. They don't. They take their exam and they sit in an area where they think nothing's going to happen. It's just a paycheck to them. And I try and say, you better wake up to reality. And if you want to hone those skills, it's a great discipline to get in to learn the fundamentals and what could happen.
I love it. I'm gonna have to shoot an IDPA match or two, because when you mentioned that USPSA is more run and gun, and IDPA is more kind of with the defensive mindset. For me, that's one of the, we were having a discussion with somebody about the USPSA classifications, and at some point it's like, how well do you play the game? It's not just about fundamentals anymore, and how well you can. It is about that, but there gets to a certain point where you have to be able to play the game very well. So that's a great point. Steve, I want to talk to you about, or I'd like you to talk to us a little bit about what your biggest takeaway from this course was.
Well, again, being comfortable in a new environment, but a very realistic potential occurrence that may happen. Just as walking into the regular Shop and Rob store or Walmart, road rage is a very big thing going on now. And potentially you have that possibility of being victimized. You don't know who out there is having a bad day. And as I've said plenty of times before, we're surrounded by crazy people. And I'll echo what Daryl and Suzanne said about the competition thing. I think for me, it also gives me the confidence that I may not have to go to the gun. It tells me that's the last thing I want to do. I carry pepper spray most of the time. Try to avoid those situations. But if I have to, I have the confidence that I may be able to wait just a little while longer before I have to display a gun. And that may be the difference, just of not having to put a finger on the trigger and go down that hole that I've got other things I'd rather do than be talking to the police or sitting in jail waiting on all these other things to happen should you be involved in a shooting. And just this class just prepares you again for one of those possible day-to-day scenarios that happens all the time. And we don't hear about all of those occurrences that happen. Most people just lose their car and file a police report, or maybe not heard from again.
Well said. As an instructor, Andy, what do you want your students to walk away from this class having a better understanding of or a better skill set for?
Well, kind of like Steve mentioned, the big thing is confidence. I want them, once they've been in this class, I want it to help develop the confidence in them that, okay, yeah, this really sucks, but I can deal with it if I need to. As far as, I guess it's just kind of getting your mind to shift from, we all go shoot. It's the square range. You put your feet right here. This is the down, that's down range, all this kind of thing. Well, in the real world, it's a hot range and it's 360 degrees. So if you've never dealt with that kind of problem before, again, the first time you see it probably doesn't need to be when it's for real. And when the penalty for failure is, grave bodily injury or death. So that's what I hope people come away from the class with, is feeling a lot more confident in their abilities, and just having essentially a roadmap for what to do in that particular situation. Now, obviously, there is no class that can teach you, that can cover every single base of every single possible, scenario. What if 12 guys with AKs come up to the vehicle? Well, it's been nice knowing you. I mean, we just can't solve all problems. But the likely problems, the most likely problems, that you might deal with in a vehicle as a civilian, this class covers a lot of that. And again, it's not my way or the highway. It's guided discovery. I'm letting you see what you can and cannot accomplish in your vehicle. I'm letting you see what, getting out of your vehicle and, using the vehicle for cover, what that's going to look like. And so now hopefully when, God forbid something does happen, you've got, again, your mental mapping is good. Now you just got to run the program to solve the problem. So
I like it. Hey, Randy, I don't know if I caught this earlier, so apologies in advance. Is this a 1 or 2 day course?
It's 1 day.
1 day course.
Now we could do a 2 day. It's just, that historically I've run it as a 1 day because it's kind of a, I don't know, an intro kind of thing. I mean, there's plenty of material that we could go deeper into it with. But it's, then what's the market for a 2 day class like that? So, who knows, maybe after this, people will be beating my door down to get a 2 day class in it, 10 day class in it, whatever. But yeah, historically it's been a 1 day class.
I think that makes a lot of sense. As you mentioned earlier, the number of people that actually take training classes is really small. I'm surprised that I haven't ran into Daryl and Suzanne as many classes as they've taught or been in. I'm sorry, because I try to take a few a year myself. But it's a really small, very small group of people that take courses, right? And out of those very small people, as you mentioned, it's even smaller people that take a vehicle combat course or vehicle course.
Right.
So I can see that to where, it would be a challenge. And plus, if I'm kind of thinking about it, it's kind of like learning so much information in 1 day. It's a challenge, I'm sure, to be able to even stay engaged day 2 of just probably being worn out. That would be my assumption. The other question I have for you is, earlier it was mentioned you guys come off into the field, into the vehicles. So how do you run that so do you bring vehicles into like a 3-berm range, or how do you do that exactly?
Okay, so it's going to kind of depend on where we are doing the class. I'm going to have to, get a, look at the site first and figure out how we're going to make this happen. While we're doing the dry work, basically all we need to do is have them all lined up, in a row. and then I just move the targets around the cars so that people get reps, engaging from different directions in the car, out to the target. So basically one target per car. And then I'm every 10, 15 minutes, I'm moving the target around the car. Then when we actually shoot live, I've got a metal knockdown target. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the target that John Hearn used to make with his company, DVC Targets, the Hardhead Ted. It's the target that they've used forever at the Rangemaster Tactical Conference. It's a metal spine with an 8-inch plate in the chest, and then like the credit card in the eyes, and then you put the plastic shell target over it. So now that same plastic shell that they've been pointing their gun at all day, that's what they're going to be pointing their gun at, when they shoot this. And like was mentioned before, if you don't hit that 8-inch plate or hit the eye box, it's unless you get really lucky and hit the spine pretty squarely, it's not going to fall down. And just like in the real world, you got to shoot until it changes its behavior. So if it's still standing, keep shooting. So I've seen people, fire 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds before it goes down. I've also seen people knock down, 5, 6, 7, 8 targets in a row, just, with one round because it was one good solid hit. So I kind of jokingly say it's a car rodeo, and I'm a traffic cop, because what we'll do is we'll have everybody in their vehicle, have them all, all the vehicles are running. And then I'm up there like I'm directing airplanes into the, where to park. And so I'll have them come up and park in a certain direction to get a certain angle on the target. And then, I'll step around behind the vehicle and give them the fight signal. And then they engage the target from whichever angle that they're having to engage it from.
Speaking of dry fire, we had a question earlier today, and I want to also shout out Dig O'Neill. One of the things that I see him doing that I really haven't seen anybody else do is dry fire reps from his vehicle. And I believe I've seen a couple live fire videos where he's actually working on that. And he'll post them in the Deliberate Training V2 group and get some great feedback from there. So I want to kind of use that. And then we had James earlier asked, who's using a Mantis or similar dry fire apps? So kind of bridge those two questions together. Are there certain dry fire drills that you would recommend students work on prior to taking the class or after the class? And then what tools do you use for dry fire outside of this course?
Okay, so as far as actual dry fire drills, again, the biggest thing in this class, the best thing that you could do to prepare for it is just to sit in your vehicle and work on getting the pistol out and presenting it out the window, out the window, out the back, out the window and out the back. Just work on, cleanly getting it around the seatbelt. However you do that. Again, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's more than one way to get out of a seatbelt. So it's just work on that. And even if you don't mess with the seatbelt to begin with, just work on sitting there in the vehicle, clearing your cover garment and getting your pistol out. Keep your finger off the trigger until it gets out the window. That's pretty much it. I mean, as far as actual drills go, I mean, if you want to put a timer on that, set your timer on delay, set it on the dashboard, and then as soon as it beeps, get your gun out and see how quickly you can do it. So as far as dry fire equipment goes, historically, I've just watched the sites. And that's one of those things. I'm a fiend about dry fire. In fact, it's almost surprising that you've not been hearing clicking while we're going here. I'm trying to fight the urge to do a little dry fire while we're on the air here. But I do some kind of dry fire. I try to do it every day. Again, one of my mentors, Tom Givens, talks about if you do dry fire just twice a week, if something happens, when's the last time you practiced with your gun? At worst, it's 3 days ago. I look at it as if you do some kind of dry fire every day. If something happens, When's the last time you practiced with your gun? At worst, it was 23 hours ago. All right. So that's my feeling on it. Do you have to be that obsessed with it? No, you don't have to be. But I'm going to say everybody on the show here probably looks at this more as a hobby, a pursuit that they enjoy, not as drudgery that they have to do for their job. If that makes sense. I tell people, if you own a gun like I own a hammer, then get whatever you want. It doesn't really matter because half the time I can't find my hammer. It's in the garage somewhere. I don't know. So if I have to go hammer something, like, dang, what's broken now? All right. So it's that's just me. But I'm dry firing every day because I enjoy shooting. So as far as the Mantis, I've used those. They're pretty cool. Also, and I am having a senior moment right now. I can't think of what it's called. It's the little cartridge that goes in the chamber. I'll think
Dry
of it.
fire mag.
The Cool Fire.
No, it's not that one. It doesn't cycle the slide or anything. It's just it's a cartridge that goes in the chamber and shoots the laser. I use those some. The only issue with that is if you're doing sighted fire with that, you really don't need to be looking at where the laser's going. You need to be looking at the sights. Now, if you're using a red dot, we can argue you need to be target focused, and you seeing, looking through the window or looking around the window, however you do it, and just noticing the dot on the target and then seeing where your laser pinged the target at. We can make an argument for that. But personally, I just, do it old school, look at the sights where they were when the gun went click. So.
Yeah, not to poo-poo any training site systems, Manus, or any of those, because I've bought a few of them myself. And the reality is, if you're going to dry fire, you're going to dry fire. If you're not, you're not. And so one thing I found is you spend kind of some money on, let's say, a Manus, for example. They're somewhat pricey, and you get this cool new thing. It's like a new video game or a new toy. You put it on the gun, you play with it for a while, and if you're not dedicated to dry firing, that cool expensive toy just goes right over into the drawer or wherever it goes, and it sits there forever. So for my personal recommendation, just work on getting into a habit of dry firing before you worry about buying all the cool little gadgets. They're an added benefit maybe, but I think we got to get into a habit of dry firing before we even need to worry about it.
Yep. And, as far as the dry fire goes, again, I'm a huge proponent of it. When we were talking earlier about the Gabe White class, when I went and took that class, it was in the end of October in 2018, and the time of year, the time had already changed, and by the time I was getting home from work, it was dark outside. You leave in the morning, it's dark, you come home, it's dark kind of thing. So I was not able to go shoot any live ammo for about a month before that class, but I was doing dry fire 3 times a day. And even though I didn't fire a single live round for a month before the class, I still, lucked my way into a turbo pin. So, and I directly attribute that to the dry fire. So
I was going to say, if you're dry firing 3 times a day, there ain't no luck involved in that, my friend.
Well, let's keep in mind, that's not like 3 hours a day. It's like 15, 20 minutes at a time. So
that's probably 99% more than most people do. So you put in the work.
No, I don't do 3 times a day now, but that was just kind of, leading up to that class because I knew I couldn't go shoot any live ammo. So
another app that you could use would be the RangeBuddy.App. Shameless plug for that deal. The dry fire tool and tracker. That way you can take notes on it. You take a picture of your dry fire dojo or wherever you're shooting. It'll have a stopwatch on there if you want to track the total time that you spent doing it. If you have 15 minutes to work, you can set up a countdown timer for 15 minutes. And then it has 140 shooting drills on there that are all sorted by the target, filterable by the skills worked. And then the neat thing is the leaderboard. So anytime you log your training session or your practice session, it'll put that on the leaderboard so you can see how you rank compared to other students or other shooters that had shot that drill. So available on Android and iOS. Now that we got that shameless plug out of the way, I want to give you guys the rest.
Real quick, I want to know how much that costs a month, Jeremy.
Right now it's free. There are a couple options. The free version will get you the first 3 drills in each category type, as well as the featured drill of the month. There's no charge for that. Really, the only thing that is behind a paywall on that is going to be the virtual instructor, and then the full access or complete access to the entire drill category. The virtual instructor is my favorite part of that app, though. It's pretty neat. You guys have all heard me talk about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, here's what I would say about that is because I kind of mentioned a minute ago, don't buy all these expensive gadgets to get into dry fire, get into the habit of dry fire. So you can download Jeremy's app for free to get started, to start creating the habit of logging on, getting on the app, starting to dry fire and practice, and then paying for this app, it's pretty minimal cost. That's what I was kind of getting to, Jeremy, how much it costs a month. I would much rather have an app in my phone that I can actually practice with, log my stuff, have multitude of different options, whether I just want to run dry fire at home or if I want to shoot some steel or if I want to find, Randy Harris, Randy Harris's drill of the month, because Jeremy does that on occasion. So I highly recommend getting onto the RangeBuddy. It's very minimal cost and it's with you all the time. That's the thing. Like, do we ever leave our phones at home anymore? I don't think anybody does. So you have this with you no matter where you're at. You can do this at work, take a cert pistol with you, as long as you have a work that, they wouldn't freak out if they see a fake gun. But yeah, I highly recommend RangeBuddy. Something that even myself, that I'm getting myself into logging into the RangeBuddy now and utilizing. So I want to throw in a little more shield for Jeremy, because it's a great app. And the other thing I'm going to tell you is I've been pushing Jeremy to charge more for that app because I think it's worth more. I really do. And Jeremy has a long list of updates of things he wants to add to this thing. Jeremy's just a nonstop idea maker for this RangeBuddy app. I've told him to slow down. I'm telling him, hey, quit releasing all your stuff so soon, because everybody's going to get all your stuff right away. Spread that stuff out, make people pay a little bit more for it. That's what I think, because it's just an invaluable app that you don't see out there. So a little bit more to that.
Well, I will be getting on there and downloading it as soon as we get off air.
I appreciate it. Yeah. And then you have the training log on there. So you can see that I was talking to Tyler the other day, and he hit me up and he's like, hey dude, sorry, I haven't been using the app. And I'm like, dude, don't worry about it. I haven't really used it much myself, just because it's one of those things where, between the full-time job, working on the app, the kiddos and everything else, I don't have time to get out there to the range. But what I do have time for, and there's no excuse for not doing, is the dry fire stuff, right? There's no excuse for not doing the dry fire stuff more often. 5, 10, 15 minutes a day is really more than enough time for what you need to do and work on. So I appreciate the shout out for the RangeBuddy app. And yeah, we're rolling out a couple new updates over the next, hopefully by the end of the year. I'm going to have a big update that I can't release publicly now, but I think it's going to be something that the training industry needs and will be hopefully well received. But before we take up,
let me put in a request. Give me one with a bowling pin shoot, because I'm going to go shoot the pin shoot next year in Michigan. So, the thing that used to be the second chance bowling pin shoot, and I just call it pin shoot. So if you can get me some, the bowling pin tables to work on that'd be great. All
right. I'll have to look into that. Yeah, I'm getting ready to add there's another drill that I'm getting ready to add tonight when I get off of here, that I think will bump it up to like 146 drills. There's a community drill feature that we rolled out. I have one 4-star review. Somebody was like, you can't upload your own drills. So I rolled that out, and I don't think that user has uploaded his drill, which kind of hurts my feelings a little bit. But the laziest question is, and quite possibly the best question that I like to ask in this is there anything that we should have talked about that we haven't covered yet before we wrap it up?
I'll kick that to Steve and Daryl and Suzanne. What do y'all think?
Well, I love to train. The problem is not enough people do it in the most realistic possible situations they can. And this is one of the more practical courses. One who has their carry permit and has become a fairly proficient at the range needs to consider taking. It's the environment that we probably ignore the most. That's a fairly likely scenario to happen.
Yep, most of us are in our car every single day.
Especially people that make their living out of their car.
Oh, yeah.
And just a tiny little bit of, let me pull it back up here. According to Tulane University, the National Insurance Crime Bureau says there are 35,000 carjackings and other auto-related abductions per year. Nearly 75% of those involve the use of a gun or other deadly weapon. Half of those occur at stop signs or traffic signals. And then the other commonplace or other most commonplace is in parking lots and garages. So, just something to think about. 35,000 is a lot. I was, kind of surprised at that actual number being that high, but, it's spread out over 50 states. I guess it's not as big a number. But, yeah, we do spend a lot of time in our vehicles. It's like you said, especially the people that, work on the road. So it's, again, the worst time to see it the first time, the worst time to see it for real is the first time. So,
Which goes back to using your car as your holster. It is a terrible idea. You're most likely to be victimized getting into your car or just getting out of your car.
Yep.
And that's why having that gun on you rather than trying to go back for it, fiddle with it, get it holstered or whatever may not be your best opportunity to protect yourself.
35,000. That's 3,000 a month almost. That's a large number. That's crazy. Daryl and Suzanne, do y'all have any parting thoughts before we jump off of here?
For me, I want to thank Randy for getting this course together. It's not every instructor that'd be willing to do this, and he works his butt off during this course. It's a long day for him. He's moving his targets around, obviously supervising everybody, directing the traffic as he talked about. He really puts a lot of effort into it. And it's, everybody was safe, everybody learned, and everybody had a good time. I mean, what more do you want from a course than that? So, I just want to thank Randy for putting this course together and letting people in this area be able to do that.
Very much so. And I've taken another class of his, but add to that in terms of safety. I know, and any one of us would know, I knew that his classes are vetted very well. The vehicle class, that as mentioned before, that's an advanced class. It is. And I knew, looking around and observing, that the people that were in that class were vetted well. And I have been in classes, and I bet we all have, that I've been in some that are advanced classes, and somehow someone slipped through the woodwork that could have been a scare. But I can tell you that it was obvious that anyone that was in that class was very well vetted and
sometimes
was there as it should be.
Yeah, sometimes it's okay to tell a student that maybe this one isn't for you yet.
Absolutely.
Maybe we've got another class that might help you along before this one, and I'm
Yeah.
not just trying to get two classes out of you. I'm trying to make sure that everybody's as safe as they need to be. So,
Is there a prerequisite for this course?
Again, the biggest thing is having a firm understanding of the 4 safety rules. This is one of those things, if somebody contacted me about it and said, hey, this is my first class, I'll be like, probably this is probably going to be some pretty deep water for you to get in to begin with. You should probably look at a more, people don't want to hear that they need to take a basic class, but everybody starting out needs to take a basic class, if nothing else than to just learn how to learn range etiquette around other people. It's the old, I've been around guns my whole life. Well, I've been around electricity my whole life, and if I started working on the wiring in this house, I would get electrocuted in short order. So that's just how life is. So, because you shoot at the rock quarry with nobody else there, and you can point your muzzle anywhere you want to because there's nobody else there, doesn't mean that you are going to be safe on a line with other people. So there is some benefit to basic classes, whether people want to hear that or not. So.
I love that. I've been around electricity my whole life. I'm going to steal that. Because I'd be the last person you want opening up your walls and doing your electrical stuff.
Yeah.
Andy, let's kick it over to you for your final thoughts.
Well, it's always a great show. I appreciate all of you all coming on, Daryl, Suzanne, Steve, and especially you, Randy. It's another class to be like, oh, I need to do this one too. I was already texting my buddy Tim K. I mentioned it before the show that I have a buddy that lives over there in Chattanooga, and I already texted him and said, hey man, how can I talk you into taking this course so I can fly over and hang out? So I'm waiting for a response. I haven't got it yet. It's getting kind of late in your area, but I'm excited. I got to figure out how I can get out there and do this one. So thank you all for coming on the show, and I appreciate your time tonight.
Yep. Thanks for having us on.
Yes. Thank you so much. Remember, it's your life. Oops, sorry about that.
Hey, let me do a real quick shameless plug here for the website. It's harriscombative.com. So there you go. So give it a look. As far as my scheduling for next year goes, I've pretty much got up through this December, and that's it. So over the course of the next couple of weeks, I plan on getting most of, or at least the first half of 2024 hammered out. I've been waiting to hear back from some folks as far as range availability goes, but in very short order, I plan to have a bunch of stuff up on the website. But I've been putting some articles on the blog, so there's some stuff to look at there. So I'm working my way through this running a website business by myself. So anyways.
Muted.
Oh, you're cutting out. I can't hear you.
Muted.
Am I unmuted now? There I am.
There you
Sorry.
are.
It happens once every episode. So I pulled up your website, and just above the fold is a quote that is speaking my language. Good enough is a false idol. Beware those who preach its virtue.
Yep.
And there have been a lot of things that you have said during this conversation that have really resonated with me. Andy and I were in class on a range, and we heard an AI tell a student, it's good enough, still hurt him. And I was like, those are near misses. What are you? That is not good enough. This woman is out here. It was a lady to gain the skills and the abilities to be able to defend herself in a life-threatening self-defense encounter on a square range. There's no good enough. That's as best as it's ever going to be, is when you're lined up in front of a stationary cardboard target. How dare you instill that false sense of security because you can't teach somebody how to shoot better? It's infuriating to me. So that is man, that really, it kind of made me light up when I saw that. That's cool. All right, I'll get off my soapbox and give you guys the rest of your evenings back. Remember, it's your life, it's your safety and protection, it's your responsibility. Y'all stay safe.